Labor is focusing on HECS debt and making children more safe in childcare, and the Coalition junior partner is still debating net zero. Joining me live now is Liberal Senator Jane Hume. Jane, great to see you. How do you feel about Barnaby Joyce and Michael McCormack teaming up? And this is their first order of business, and this is where the headlines are today when it comes to your side of politics.
Laura, it's the first day back in Parliament. There's a lot of new faces and shiny shoes, which is always a good thing and a pep in a step for lots of people in the building. And there are some really important issues that need to be discussed. And you're right, we're discussing HECS and we're discussing keeping our children safe in the House of Representatives today. In the meantime, Barnaby Joyce and Michael McCormack, two people who I greatly admire, whose opinions I value and whose working relationship I have enjoyed over many years, have decided that this is the most important issue for the National Party. Now, Susan Lee, as Leader of the Opposition, has already set up a working group into energy and into the energy transition that is focused specifically on making sure that we have a reliable and a stable grid that will provide affordable power for households and businesses, but at the same time works out how we can make that transition to a cleaner energy future, reduce our emissions in a transparent and sensible and measured way, and make sure that we meet our international obligations. Over and over again now, the electorate has told us that they want to see a net zero energy future. They want to see emissions come down. That's what successive elections have told us. Now, my personal opinion is that this is profoundly important for not just the electorate, but also for our country. We want to make sure, though, that that transition to a lower emissions future is seen through the lens of an economic problem, because that is exactly what it is. We want to make sure that we have abundant energy in this country, but we also want to make sure that we bring down emissions and that we make sure that we have a better future and a better planet for our children and their children.
Net zero doesn't seem to be the issue per se then. That's kind of the umbrella that all this policy fits under, which we've been debating for the best part of 20 years, if not longer. It seems like, look, I would say the Labor Party do not have the answers here. They do not have the answers on price and stability. They might have the answers on, bringing down emissions, but it doesn't matter if you don't have all three parts of that puzzle. But the coalition, some parts of the coalition, definitely in the Nats, and I would say in the Liberal Party as well, are still arguing whether you do even need that third piece of the puzzle. What does that say about, the messaging? And you've got a long time before the next election, but can you win inner city seats, outer city seats, suburban seats with that kind of message?
Well, that's exactly what the electorate have told us, which is why it's so important to look at the net zero transition through an economic lens rather than a political one. We need to be able to put take the politics out of this issue and say, how do we get to a net zero energy future, reduce emissions, but at the same time maintain our prosperity, take advantage of some of the growth that can come with that, and also, build the pie, increase the pie rather than shrink the pie. We don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot with one of our greatest assets, which is energy abundance. We have a resource abundance in this country that we should be using for our own prosperity. We can do both. It's about how we get there and the timeline of that. That is worth a debate. That is worth a discussion. But it doesn't need to be binary. Net zero or no net zero, emissions or no emissions, reduce emissions or don't reduce emissions. It's not a binary conversation. It's about the journey, how we get there efficiently, effectively, so that we all become more prosperous.
I agree with you, Jane. And the idea that we can have wall-to-wall solar panels right across this country and wind farms both on and offshore, it doesn't work. It doesn't work now. It doesn't work. In 20 or 30 years from now, you're going to need that firming, cheaper power. And batteries just really aren't up to scratch and don't ever look like they're going to get there.
There are ways. Yeah, Laura, there are ways. I was just last week, I was visiting an organisation in Victoria that is creating renewable gas. It's using landfill, old quarries, then used for landfill, tapping into the methane and creating power from that so successfully that they're now running a data centre on their landfill site, on the site. And they're mining Bitcoin there. They're making money from mining Bitcoin on the site of landfill because they can create that renewable energy source. They can pump methane directly back into the gas grid. There's so much ingenuity out there. There's great innovation and huge opportunities. It's about how we harness it so that we all move in the right direction. Take the politics out. Look at take the politics out, look at the economics, and make that transition a sensible and a sustainable one for all of us.
I mean, take the politics out. That's really a message to a lot of people within your own party room, isn't it?
All sides of chambers, all sides of chambers, because everybody comes at this with a political lens. Let's look at it through the economics.
First week of Parliament, though, Barnaby Joyce and Michael McCormack standing up saying net zero. Look, I don't blame them for that because they've really long talked about it. Barnaby Joyce more so, although he was the leader of the Nationals when it was actually imposed and agreed to by Scott Morrison. So it's much easier to say these things from the backbench than when you're in a position of power. You actually agree to things.
Well, that is true. That's true, Laura. Also, you know, and one of the strengths of our party is that you can do that. As a backbencher, you can say what it is that you want. You can do whatever it is that you want, and introduce private members' bills, private senators' bills. That's all good, and you don't get chucked out of your party. In the Labor Party, if you dissent any way, shape or form, you're out. So I would much rather have that obligation to have alternative views within a party room than to simply have a homogenous view that's imposed upon a party.
Alex Antic standing out talking about transgender issues in the first parliamentary sitting week back of this term. Does that say something about your values as a Liberal Party, or is that an outlier?
There are many people within the Liberal Party, within the National Party, and indeed right around the Parliament that hold very personal views, something that is very personal to them that they would like to prosecute. And this is the chamber in which to do it. They do represent a proportion, small as it may be, of the Australian population. The most important thing, though, that I think is we can focus on what is really important for Australia right now. And to me, the big headline of the day is that $144 billion of debt, that debt that has racked up under this Labor government, that we need to address as a matter of urgency. There's Treasury not just belling the cat, but essentially sounding an alarm, saying that the only way that we're going to be able to deal economically with the budget deficits that are, as far as the eye can see, that red ink, is to raise taxes and cut spending. Now, the only thing that Labor have come up with is taxing unrealised capital gains. This is a terrible, terrible tax. But clearly, this is stuff that they didn't want to talk about before the election that they're going to have to face after.
But they did talk about that's been on the books for quite some time, though. It's not that they didn't.
The unrealised capital gains.
They had,
absolutely.
They had it on the books for 3 years.
Is that going to solve the problem? Is that going to solve the problem?
No, but if it was a quid pro quo...
Treasury have highlighted cutting spending and increasing taxes.
I agree with you, Jane. I agree with you. Talking about taxing money that you haven't even earned yet seems crazy.
Crazy.
In and of itself. But what if it was part of a broader package that stopped the government's over-reliance on personal income tax? Is that something you'd be open to?
We've said we're very open to tax reform, but it must be fair. It can't simply be hitting retirees, hitting small businesses that are already doing it tough, or an overtaxed working population. Now, we're open to the ideas. What concerns me is that Labor are already saying that they're ruling things out. They're having this productivity roundtable, but they're already ruling things out. Well, if you're already ruling things out before you get there, essentially this is just a whitewash for an agenda that Labor already has. Let's have a real conversation about productivity. What it is that's going to shift the dial.
Jane, great to talk to you. We'll speak soon.